If you haven't heard, a lot of people were getting excited about Android Wear 2.0, and then all the biggest Android Wear smartwatch manufacturers decided they're not going to release a new smartwatch this year. Decided it wasn't worth it. So what smartwatch manufacturers does that leave left? The two big guys are Apple and Samsung. Yeah, they compete on a lot of things. And I find it interesting that Samsung decided to write their own software for their own hardware and not just go with an Android Wear software. Maybe they didn't believe in Android Wear. Maybe they tried it and decided we could do better. But just, just interesting to me. And of course, Apple always makes their own hardware and software, so that was no surprise when the Apple Watch came out. So how does watchOS compare to Tizen OS? What do you think the Apple sheep thinks? Well, no, to Tizen OS's credit, they did a great job at acknowledging that you need more than just a touch interface to navigate through something that's that small. Apple acknowledged this first with the digital crown, so then Galaxy Gear came up with this idea of the spinning bezel, which a lot of people really love. It allows you to quickly access many different features in the watch just by rotating that bezel, which is really easy. And just about anything you want to browse through, you don't have to swipe a bunch of times on that tiny touchscreen. You can just scroll through it. And I'm glad they took advantage of that. It's very similar to the digital crown on the Apple Watch, which allows you to access lots of different things like zooming in and out, and of course scrolling without covering up the display. And Apple just decided we never want our users to have two fingers on the screen at once. That wasn't going to work, and they wanted their home screen, which I think it's important to have a side of your watch that shows you all of the apps you have on it. And Tizen OS does a very similar thing. It also has a home screen that can be reached by pressing the home button on the side, which gives you access to all of the apps on the device. And instead of zooming out like you do on the Apple Watch, you browse through them with the rotating bezel and you access them all that way. Now, of course, which way is more efficient is often just personal preference. I found personally when I was using my Apple Watch, I was able to get to where I wanted a lot quicker because on watchOS 3 you have something called a dock, which allows you to put your most important information all in a row, which can be easily accessed just by pressing one button, and you can have a variety of complications on your own watch face, even third-party complications, which just means if you need quick access on the watch face itself, you can just tap that complication, it'll open that app immediately, which I found less common on Tizen OS, which is where I think the Apple Watch has a bit of an advantage over Tizen OS in the fact that since it is Apple, lots of people use Apple products, there's a lot more third-party apps available for watchOS. Things like the Tesla app and Facebook Messenger. There's lots of messaging apps you can get on the Apple Watch that can be fully used. When you have Facebook Messenger on your Apple Watch, you can reply to people with Scribble, with dictation, with faces. You have all those options where Tizen OS has very limited third-party apps. So you're really only getting what Samsung has made for you. And again, this isn't really Samsung's fault. This is just the market leaning more towards an Apple ecosystem, which as an Apple sheep, I can understand given Samsung is really well known for their phones, but there's not a huge base of people that are super loyalist to Samsung. Only get the Samsung phone, only get the Samsung tablet, only get the Samsung watch, only get the Samsung monitor, computer. That's not very common. I know you're out there. It's just, I think the Apple sheep outweigh that. So third parties have to develop more for the Apple Watch just because it is the biggest piece of the pie. So if they make things for that, they're gonna have more luck. So yeah, to no surprise, the Apple sheep does favor watchOS over Tizen OS. But remember, I don't hate Tizen OS because it doesn't have a lot of third-party apps. I think that's because a lot of people don't buy Samsung stuff compared to how many people buy Apple stuff. I think Samsung did a great job at making something easy to navigate through and not just completely ripping off the Apple Watch and making a digital crown, which would have been very lazy. I'm excited to see how well it runs on the Samsung Gear S3 coming out in the near future, which is supposed to be cool. I'd love to review it and compare it to my Apple Watch Series 2 once that's available. So which wearable OS do you prefer? Let me know in the comments below and we can have a comment war. So this is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.